Hello, I'm Bess Herbert and I work as Advocacy Specialist at End Corporal Punishment. End Corporal Punishment is the only global entity dedicated to ending corporal punishment of children worldwide and is hosted by the World Health Organization. We have an advisory committee that includes UNICEF and Save the Children. This is a presentation I made at the ISPCAN conference that took place in Uppsala, Sweden in August 2024. In this presentation, I briefly summarise what we've learnt about ending corporal punishment by combining law reform with strategies to change social norms and behaviour. Corporal punishment is the most common and widely accepted form of violence against children, with vast numbers regularly experiencing it in multiple settings of their lives. For example, UNICEF tells us that worldwide, around 4 in 5 of all children aged 1 to 14 years are regularly subjected to violent discipline in their home. Over 50 years of research on millions of children across geographical and cultural contexts has found strong evidence connecting corporal punishment with multiple short and long-term harmful impacts for both the child and society. These include physical and emotional harm, impairment of cognitive development, educational achievement and relationships, and associations with many negative impacts such as addiction, perpetration and victimization of violence, suicide, and many others. When we consider the huge prevalence and the negative impacts of corporal punishment, we see it can be regarded as a public health crisis. Traditionally, there's been widespread acceptance of a level of violent punishment of children in most, if maybe not quite all, societies, and in many places a belief that it's in children's best interests or as part of good child raising or educating. In many countries, that acceptance of an adult's supposed right to physically punish a child has been enshrined in legislation. Even where it isn't explicit, almost always there is an assumption in law that corporal punishment is acceptable, normal, and not regarded as assault. The acceptance and prevalence of corporal punishment is underpinned by harmful social norms, including those associated with children and their rights and place in society or family, gender-based norms, and norms around violence, power, and authority, among others. As a key example, the legality of corporal punishment is very symbolic of and perpetuates the low status of children. For example, that children are not yet fully human or intelligent or of equal worth to adults. It's vital to understand that the acceptance and normalisation of some level of violence against children, i.e. corporal punishment, makes it much harder, in fact I would argue almost impossible, to end other forms of violence against children, for example sexual violence. Of course, as the smallest and most vulnerable members of society, children deserve more, not less, protection from assault. And today, children's right to protection from corporal punishment has been recognised in many international and regional human rights treaties and development programmes, for example, the Sustainable Development Goals and Africa 2040 Agenda for Children, all recognise that ending corporal punishment of children is critical. However, progress is happening. There's a growing understanding in many places that violent punishment of children must end. And today, 67 states have enacted laws prohibiting all corporal punishment of children, with more in progress. I'm very happy to tell you that Tajikistan became the 67th state on the 20th of June this year. Their new law requires that parents do not use violence, including corporal punishment, against the child, that they respect the child's dignity and do not allow cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment towards them. The law also confirms the prohibition on teachers using corporal punishment. The law will be widely communicated to the public, implemented with a range of measures to support non-violent positive parenting, and is part of a national programme to reform the child protection system. Congratulations to Tajikistan. The ongoing stream of countries passing laws prohibiting corporal punishment has been described as a global social norms cascade. Enacting a law that prohibits corporal punishment of children is essential and a fundamental right for children, but alone it isn't sufficient to eliminate corporal punishment. Evidence and experience increasingly show that when a law is well implemented and embedded within a systemic approach that addresses harmful social norms that drive violent behaviour, a substantial decline in the prevalence of violent punishment can be seen over time. I'll briefly explore some of the key strategies that help to reduce social acceptance and use of corporal punishment. First of all, I want to underline that law reform is itself a very powerful strategy for changing norms and behaviour. It powerfully communicates what is and isn't acceptable within society. It reframes corporal punishment as violence rather than normal child rearing, and it requires professionals to act and communicate in line with the law. The wording of the law can also often explicitly promote respect for children and their human rights. For example, when Colombia prohibited all corporal punishment of children in 2021, the law included children's rights to be well treated. The law stated, "Children and adolescents have the right to be well treated, to receive guidance, education, care and discipline through non-violent methods. This right includes the protection of their physical, psychological and emotional integrity." However, it's important to note that the effects of law reform can be different in each country, depending on many different factors. Social discourse and public education are critical processes that effectively accompany law reform. Social discourse at all levels, from national to community and even family, plays a key role in changing social attitudes and behaviour related to corporal punishment. In many countries, the change in law is accompanied by widespread discussion of corporal punishment and related issues such as parenting, child development, child protection and abuse, traditional normalisation of violence in childhood, and much more. It can be quite an emotional discussion, maybe re-examining childhood experiences and seeing parenting or education practices in a new light. And it can also raise questions about traditional values and practices. Sweden, as I'm sure you know, was the first country to ban corporal punishment in 1979. The passing of the ban was preceded by many years of discussion about violence in childhood. Family and understanding and discussion about the new law was encouraged by including information on the side of breakfast milk cartons. In Japan, in the 4 years surrounding prohibition of corporal punishment there in 2020, there was extensive social discussion about violence in child raising, prompted by 2 tragic cases of child murder due to violent punishment that captured public attention. Over that time, 17% of the adult population, or 17 million adults, changed their opinion about whether corporal punishment was acceptable. A Save the Children survey found that learning about the harms of violent punishment was the most persuasive factor. Government-led public education can also play a powerful role. It should ensure that the entire population receives accurate information about the law reform, the reasons for it, and how it will be implemented and will affect people. It can be very effective to use creative communication methods, in multiple languages, and communication that is ideally positive and proud of the change being made for children, and listens as well as imparts information. Public education should also provide information about alternative discipline approaches, opportunities to ask questions, access support, and report concerns. Public education includes both national level communications campaigns, but can also include community level interventions. And very importantly, public education and awareness raising should be sustained over long periods of time. Traditional beliefs and norms about corporal punishment can be very ingrained and take a long time to shift. Within a public education project, it can be very helpful for key leaders such as political, faith, celebrity, health and community leaders take a clear, positive position on the new law and explain why they support it. Wales's prohibition of all corporal punishment came into effect in 2022. The Welsh Government ran a really excellent communications campaign. It included radio, TV TV and newspaper adverts before and after the law came into effect. They held over 170 consultations and conversations with different community groups. Information was provided in 11 languages and provided at the country border to new arrivals in the country. Their communication tone was proud and positive. We don't do that in Wales. Sometimes the question arises, what's the most effective strategy for eliminating corporal punishment? Is it law reform or public education programs? Is it really necessary to bring the law into it? Surely we can just educate people away from violent punishment of children. Bussman et al. Carried out a study addressing exactly this question. In 2007, they interviewed 1,000 parents in each of 5 European countries, asking them about their use of corporal punishment. At the time, among these countries, 2 had prohibited corporal punishment and carried out public education campaigns. 1 had prohibited but not carried out public education. 1 had done public education alone but not changed their law, and 1 had neither prohibited corporal punishment nor carried out public education. You can see from this graph the varying use of corporal punishment among these countries, and their conclusion was the most effective approach is a combination of legal change and public education. In other words, a consistent message from the law and from public education. It's important to remember that this study was carried out in high-income countries in Europe, and achieving change in other contexts could be different, and it would be great if this study was repeated in other regions, for example. There are several other effective social norms interventions, and here are just a few for which we have some strong evidence. Support for positive parenting can include a wide range of measures that provide support and information to parents. And there is good evidence that many parenting programs can help to reduce harsh or violent punishment in families. Importantly, they should provide clear information about the harms of violent punishment and support parents to adopt positive alternatives. Parenting programs and interventions help change social norms and behaviour in multiple ways. They recognise the value of parenting, provide peer support and reduce parent isolation, and provide a chance for parents to reflect on their own childhood experiences, to consider their long-term goals for their child, and empower parents with information, for example, about child development. They also provide the chance to discuss issues like power dynamics, authority and respect within families, and to reflect on gender-based norms and roles within family and societies. It's particularly effective to involve fathers as well as mothers for maximum impact. Interventions with parents are powerful because almost always parents are very motivated by wanting the best for their children. In Nepal, where corporal punishment of children has been fully prohibited, prevalence is declining slowly but remains very high. UNICEF data suggests that 82% of children had been subjected to corporal punishment in the past month. UNICEF are delivering a parenting program that particularly uses social and behavioural change components, and it aims to promote positive parent-child relationships, emphasising nurturing, empowering and non-violent approaches. And in particular, the programme shares information about child development and needs and information about positive discipline methods. The programme provides information and support through parenting classes and fairs, over 250 episodes of a parenting radio programme, through a parenting education website. Information is also shared on social media, and 230 frontline workers and 120 new parenting program trainers have been trained. In the first few months, they saw a 6% decline in use of corporal punishment, and they expect much bigger impact in the coming years. Promotion of non-violent schools is another very effective way of ending the use and acceptance of violent punishment of children. Evidence suggests that whole school or whole community interventions are most effective, involving everyone in the school community and ideally families and key community members as well over a sustained period of time. Programs should provide educators with alternatives, support and opportunities to reflect on their own beliefs about discipline. Because of schools' key role in communities, efforts to create non-violent schools often have positive spillover effects on norms and behaviour in the surrounding families and communities. There are other promising interventions. For example, no-hit zones are a location-based strategy where everyone in a particular location, for example a hospital, agrees that no violence will be accepted in that location. And clear signs and non-judgmental but clear communication is used to ensure that everyone understands what's acceptable in that place. Efforts to end corporal punishment in other contexts, for example sports, can also have a spillover impact on norms and behaviour in the wider community. In summary, a comprehensive approach is needed to eliminate corporal punishment of children that combines law reform with scaled measures to change social norms and behaviour. In our implementation guidance, we include 5 steps. Number 1, enacting the law that explicitly prohibits corporal punishment of children. Number 2, developing a costed national implementation plan and integrating the new law into existing systems and services, for example, including it in professional training. Number 3, communicating the new law to the whole of society. Number 4, providing support for positive parenting, and that also includes positive education. And number 5, monitoring and evaluating the impact of the law and taking this information into account in an ongoing manner. When a law is well implemented, there is growing evidence that you see an ongoing decline in the use and support for violent punishment of children. Here are a few examples. In Sweden, the number of children being subjected to corporal punishment has dropped from around 50% to just a few percent. In New Zealand, there's been a decline in the approval of corporal punishment from around 90% to 19% of the adult population. In Japan, there was a 17% decrease in acceptance of corporal punishment in the 4 years surrounding the enactment of the new law. In Kenya, enactment of prohibition was associated with an accelerated decrease in the use of corporal punishment. And in Romania, use of all corporal punishment decreased by 22% in the 10 years following prohibition, while severe violent punishment of children halved. There is also growing evidence of positive impacts on wider forms of violence. For example, in Sweden, evidence has been found of associated declines in theft, narcotics crimes, assaults against young children, rape, youth suicide, and use of alcohol and drugs. In Finland, there's been an associated decline in the number of children who are murdered. In Germany, there is an associated decrease in youth violence and proportion of women experiencing physical injury due to domestic violence. Meanwhile, comparative research has identified that countries with prohibition have 31% less frequent youth fighting, and a recent study has found that countries with prohibition have significantly lower levels of youth suicide, which peaks around 13 years after law reform. We certainly need more research in this area and more consistent monitoring of the impact of prohibition in different contexts, but the evidence we have suggests that taking steps to prohibit corporal punishment and effectively implement the law can impact children's experience of violence at scale, with many positive additional benefits for society. You can find out more about evidence of the positive impact of prohibition in this publication, available on our website. So in summary, the strengths of this approach are many. Firstly, that this is a population level intervention and it reduces the use and acceptance of corporal punishment and other forms of violence against children at scale. It's a low cost preventative approach, and the impact continues developing over years. In addition, there are multiple additional benefits. For example, it helps to raise child status in society, reduces wider social acceptance of violence, and, for example, enables professionals to give much clearer messaging to parents and to act more quickly and decisively when they see violence against children within a family. As an example, Tunisia prohibited all corporal punishment of children in 2010. They continue to see high prevalence of corporal punishment, but in recent years have implemented a comprehensive approach addressing violent punishment of children in families that includes both public awareness, education, and a program to support positive parenting. The most recent UNICEF survey data has found that there's been a 10% decrease in the number of children experiencing severe violent punishment, and this equates to 300,000 fewer children being subjected to severe violent punishment every month. Of course, many challenges remain, and we have to remember that only 14% of the world's children are so far fully protected from all violence, including corporal punishment, by law. Some of the challenges and obstacles include that ending violence against children remains a low priority in many countries. In addition, the ongoing cultural acceptance of corporal punishment prevents adoption of strategies to end it. And lack of research on effective law implementation and communication campaigns, particularly in the Global South, impede progress. However, it is vital to underline that ending corporal punishment of children is possible, and it promises huge benefits to children and to society as a whole. Let's not delay any further in taking this fundamental and positive step for children and for society.